For the next hour, you'll be leaving the show me state and entering the show me the money state. So stop what you're doing, grab a pen, and get ready to learn. Jake Floyd of Floyd Financial Group will be your guide for straight talk and honest answers about living the life you deserve in retirement. So prepare to be empowered. Now, here are your Show Me the Money hosts, Randy Floyd, Jake Floyd, and Jeff Shade.
Thank you so much. Welcome to Show Me the Money, the radio show that gives you the straight talk and honest answers you need to help you reach your wealth management and retirement goals through smart investing and careful planning. On today's show, we're going to be talking about I don't trust the market, retirement planning for the conservative investor. I've just retired and I have a large 401k. What do I need to do next? Christian stewardship and retirement, planning wisely without fear. And then finally, leaving money to kids versus spending it, how Ozarks families think about money. My name's Jeff Shade, and I'm just here to ask the questions, but the words of wisdom and solid advice, they come from Jake Floyd here this week at Floyd Financial Group. Hey, Jake, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Jeff. Thanks for asking.
Certainly welcome, my friend. I hope everybody else is having a great weekend. As always, we appreciate you carving out a little time for us here on Show Me the Money. Today, we're talking about something, Jake, that we hear all the time. I don't trust the market, and honestly, I think after the last 20 years, I get it. Jake, let's talk about how conservative retirees can plan smartly without getting sold something that they don't understand. When someone, Jake, says, I don't trust the market, what do you think that they're really saying?
People are worried about losing their money. People that lived through 2000, some that lived through 1987, some that lived through 2008. I think people are worried that what they've worked a lifetime to accumulate that they will lose, and for good reason. It took you a lifetime to get here, and you can't go back and do it in the next couple of years, so this has to last you at this point. If you're 60 plus years old, what you have really has to last you, and I think people are just nervous that the market will deal them a hand that they can't deal with.
That's right, and Wall Street can be a little bit moody. Right now, it's in a fairly good mood, but of course, back in 2008, 20, and 22, it was in a bad mood, but it usually always does bounce back. Is it possible to retire, Jake, do you think, without the stock market at all?
It is possible. Most people, in my experience, have not saved enough to do that, simply because the savings rate for the last, really since 2008, or so have been so low, minus the last couple of years, that it's really hard to get enough interest to replace what you're taking in income. So unless you've saved significantly more than maybe you needed to, most people need a better growth engine than a savings account or a CD.
Now, when we talk about savings accounts and CDs, I know that there was a time in the recent past, Jake, when they were doing pretty well. I mean, online, I could find some interest rates. They were like 4.5%, close to 5%. What's the reality today?
Yeah, so rates are coming down some. In fact, this last week, we saw that the 10-year Treasury is moving back down toward 4%, which it hasn't been there for several months. So as you know, if you've been listening to this show, I think that interest rates are going to come down quite a bit over the next 18 months or so. Maybe not for reasons that we like, but I do think interest rates will come down. As interest rates come down, that's good for everybody except for savers. Savers are the ones that get left holding the bag because your interest rate goes from 5% a couple of years ago to near 0% like it was from 2010 to 2022. To answer your question, Jeff, I would say CD rates on average right now are probably 3.5 or so. If you're looking at like a 7-month to 1-year CD, they're going to be hesitant to give it out on really big numbers, though. If you get 250,000 in there, they're going to hesitate on that. But there's some that will give you like 7%, but they'll limit you to $2,500, for example. They're just looking at it as a way to acquire a customer. So overall, I'd say 3 to 3.5 is where CD rates live right now. There might be some close to 4 renewing today, but if interest rates go much lower, that will be a thing of the past too.
Jake, with Kevin Warsh being the new Fed chair, do you see interest rates dropping more than they would have under Jay Powell?
The short answer there is yes. I'm sure that Mr. Warsh and Mr. Trump have an agreement of some sort, right? That he is not going to just start raising rates. He would not have picked him if he didn't think that he was going to at least look dovishly at rates and potentially lower them. According to gold and silver prices, they clearly don't think he's going to lower them as much as the other Kevin Hassett that they were expecting to have. That's why gold, silver specifically went from like 123 an ounce to like 71 or something, and it's been hovering between 70 and 85 since then. I think Mr. Warsh, though, will probably be thoughtful. He is not a we're automatically going to lower rates kind of guy, but I would say that he's probably in this situation more dovish than the current Fed president.
Jake, would you say that conservative people sometimes, when it comes to investments, can be a little too conservative? They can go the wrong way.
Sometimes, yeah. Again, though, there's a famous quote that says, I'm not as concerned about the return on my money as I am concerned about the return of my money.
Right.
There's some truth to that in retirement. If you're 60 to 65 years old or older, you have pretty much accumulated what you're going to accumulate. You might accumulate a little bit more, but basically your nest egg at that point will be what you have. And so you've done the hard work, you've saved it, you've cultivated it, you've grown it. And my job as a financial advisor primarily is not to mess that up, not to make a big mistake in retirement, right? Because if you've done a good job saving, we don't necessarily need to be swinging for the fences to make ends meet. Now, everybody's situation is a little bit different, but taking the risk of having a 25 or 30% drawdown in retirement is not worth an extra couple percent in gain, in my opinion, when it comes to retirement. We want to make a good return, and we will, but we don't want to be risking the farm to do it. So there's a balancing act that has to happen once you get close and into retirement, that we really need to take the worst case scenario off the table.
So, Jake, if I'm hearing you correctly, the goal isn't zero risk. The goal is controlled risk with no catastrophic risk. Of course, if the market goes down, we want you to just be mildly annoyed, but it's not going to be a life-changing thing. Talking with Jake Floyd here at Floyd Financial Group, we're talking about conservative investing. Again, if our program resonates with you, you want to have a further conversation, you can ask for your Floyd Financial Group retirement review. There is no cost, no obligation, and no judgment. You can get yours by calling 417-889-7233. We'd love to talk to you. So, Jake, the risk retirees should fear most is, I guess, market risk. And that's one risk, but retirees have several bigger ones as well, too, right?
Right, yeah, there's a lot of risks out there waiting to grab you, or potholes as I like to call them, right?
Yeah.
And we have risk from market risk, but there's also sequence of returns risk. There's inflation risk, there's tax risk, there's product risk, depending on what you've bought from a financial standpoint, financial products. There's a lot of different things to consider. There's health insurance risk. There's a lot of things to worry about. And I think having somebody who's been here, who has seen the potholes, who has probably hit all the potholes, like, oh, that one wasn't too bad. That one you really want to watch out for over there. As you're driving down the dirt road, and I'm sure everybody listening here has driven down some dirt roads, right?
Oh, yeah.
You'd be like, oh, most of those potholes aren't too bad, but about halfway up on the right, that one you want to really watch out for, because that one will get you. It's really no different with retirement, and unfortunately, the best way to learn about these things is to learn the hard way.
Right.
And you can't afford to learn the hard way if you're only going to retire once. So after being here for 20 years, I can help you avoid a lot of the potholes in the road. And the goal here is to make a good return, not worry about running out of money. We don't want you to run out of money, and let you be able to enjoy retirement without laying awake at night wondering if you're going to make it.
And some of those potholes or risks that you're talking about would also include longevity risk, living longer than expected, tax risk, especially with RMDs, and product risk. That's buying something that you don't understand. But I want to hit on sequence of return risk a little bit. Can you explain that briefly for those people who have heard the term, but they don't know exactly what it is?
So if I have the next 10 years of returns, and let's say it comes in 6%, 0%, 12%, negative 15%, and so on over the next 10 years, and it averages 6%. If I then turn those returns around and I take losses first and gains at the end, you still arrive at 6%, and you still arrive at the same number as long as you're not taking any money out of your portfolio. Once you start to take withdrawals in retirement, then the sequence of returns really matters a lot, because you're taking money out. If the market's down, you keep taking money out, and it makes it very difficult to get back to even. So we have some illustrations that we look at in the office from time to time that'll show over 25 years, even though both people make 6% and withdraw 5%, one guy takes $1 million and turns it into $1.5 million, and then the other guy's broke at 83 years old. And it's simply the sequence of returns. And we need to avoid having big drawdowns in order to kind of curb that sequence of returns risk. And that's where some of the risk mitigating tools that we'll use, whether it's annuities or bonds or in some cases real estate type investments, we need to make sure that we don't take a huge hit at some point, because that's the only real big risk to your retirement. We want to make sure we make a good return. But if you're withdrawing a reasonable amount of money, even if we make 3 or 4% return, you're still going to not be able to live long enough to run out of money. And so the biggest thing we have to take off the table, obviously we want to make a better return than that, but the biggest thing we need to take off the table is a big -30, -50, or some kind of big 2008 kind of scenario. That's the biggest pothole. That's the pothole that won't just scare you, but it'll destroy your car if you hit it.
Right. It'll break that tie rod right in half, and it can be an expensive fix. So, Jake, of course, we're talking to Salt of the Earth people right here in Springfield, Missouri, and we're talking about conservative investors here. What does a conservative retirement plan then actually look like?
Because you basically get 3 things from your investment portfolio, right? There's 3 components. You have a growth component. Everybody needs growth to be able to stave off inflation or be able to, replace what you're taking out in income or just grow the money in general. You have a safety component. Everybody's need for safety is a little bit different. You have risk tolerance, but you also have risk capacity. How much risk can you afford to take? And then everybody needs a certain degree of liquidity. You need to be able to get to the money either from a monthly income standpoint or emergencies or trips or whatever. The problem is there's not one investment that does all 3 of those things well. So, for example, the market is good at growing money and it's good at being liquid, but it's bad at safety. The market, you just kind of got to roll with what it gives you. There are other investments that are good at growth and safety, but sacrifice liquidity to do it. Or a savings account or mattress money until 2022 here is good at liquidity and safety, but you don't make any money. Now, again, for the last little bit, we made a little bit of money in savings, but I think those days are numbered. So we need at least a couple of buckets of money to satisfy all 3 of those things, because no one investment can do it all.
Jake, when I talk about conservative investing, a lot of people in their mind hear the word annuities. Conservative investors hear that a lot. Can you tell me how annuities would fit into a conservative investing plan?
Yeah, so annuities are typically a 4-letter word to a lot of people. They don't have a good connotation. They don't have a good feeling about annuities when they start to hear about them. And a lot of it is because they're either familiar with variable annuities or they're familiar with what's known as kind of an immediate annuity, where we simply have an irrevocable decision to turn a pile of money into income and you can never change it. Like the old J.G. Wentworth commercials.
Yeah.
I have an annuity, I need cash now thing. Because that's the only exposure they've ever had to annuities, a lot of them have a bad taste in their mouth about annuities. There are other types of annuities, one being, let's say, a fixed indexed annuity. And honestly, we're kind of in the last hurrah here of where we're going to want to do these, because as interest rates really start to fall, they look less attractive. But if we set these up while interest rates are high, they can be quite good. But a fixed index annuity says, hey, the fixed part means you can't lose any money due to stock market risk. So 0 is your floor. You can never make a negative return. Index means it tracks an index. I prefer the ones that track the S&P 500. The pricing on that index is better than any other index. And there's also no lying, no game playing in the index. There's a lot of these with what are called smart beta indexes, where they kind of fabricate an index and say, hey, we'll give you 150% of what this index does. But that can be a dangerous game. So I like the S&P because you can't cheat it, and it's on the news every night. It's easy to follow. But the index part means it tracks an index. So if the market goes down, we don't lose. If the market goes up, we get a portion of the gain. We don't get all the gain, but we get, in some cases, the lion's share of the gain. At least right now we can. As interest rates go down, interest rates are kind of the horsepower behind these products. So if interest rates go back down to 1 or 2%, then these will be a lot less attractive. But if we set them up while interest rates are higher, because of the underlying investment, it kind of sets us up a hedge against interest rates going down. a lot of people like it for that reason.
And Jake, I really love this topic about conservative investing because it's real. A lot of people listening don't want to gamble with retirement. They're not trying to hit home runs every time. They just want a plan that's solid, understandable, and built to survive bad markets. So, Jake, I want to take a moment here to talk to our fine citizens here of Springfield, Missouri. If you want help building that kind of conservative, risk-managed retirement plan, especially if you're thinking, I don't trust the market, reach out to us and get your second opinion. Call 417-889-7233 and ask your Floyd Financial Group Retirement Review. That's 417-889-7233. It's a chance to review your investments, your risk exposure, your fees, and your retirement income plan and see if you're positioned for the next 10 to 20 years or just the next 10 to 20 days. Once again, that number is 417-889-7233. No cost, no obligation, no judgment. We'll meet you where you are. We're also online at floydfinancialgroup.com. Jake, let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to be talking about large 401k balances, what to do next when Show Me the Money continues here on 104.1 FM KSGF, where Springfield comes to talk.
Ready for another helping of some more real money talk? Thought so. Now, here's another serving of Show Me the Money with your hosts, Jake Floyd and Jeff Shea.
Welcome back to Show Me the Money. I'm Jake Floyd, and in this segment, we're going to be talking about I've just retired and I have a 401k balance. What do I do next?
And Jake, a lot of people think retirement starts when the paycheck stops, but that is exactly when the real planning begins. A 401k is a powerful tool, but how you use it after retirement can make all the difference. So first off, Jake, what is the biggest mistake that you see retirees make right after they retire with a 401k balance?
Yeah, I think a lot of people rush when they get done. They're like, hey, I need to take this money out, or some people will take it out and start spending it right away. And that's okay if you need to supplement your income and that kind of thing. But if you have no plan on how you're going to spend that money, many people will get out over their skis on the spending very quickly because they say, hey, I've lived my whole life saving to this point, and I haven't had a lot of extra money. And then all of a sudden I have several $100,000 in my 401k, and they're kind of licking their chops and taking vacations and all that kind of thing, which there's nothing wrong with that. But we want to have a plan to make sure that that spending doesn't get out of hand, because it can be very easy to blow through 10 or 15% of your retirement in the first little bit if you're not careful.
And I know someone who has done just that, Jake. I mean, in the first year of retirement, I think they went through probably 15 to 20% of their retirement savings. They have traveled all over the country without thinking about this money needing to last for them. A retirement that could be 20 and 30 years. So I think slow down and think systematically. So step one, what should retirees first do when they take a look at that 401 balance, whether it's $100,000 or $1 million?
Yeah, I think that people need to develop a plan for how much money they're going to spend, how they're going to invest that money, what kind of returns they think they can expect off of that money, how much inflation they want to build in, what kind of taxes they're going to be paying. If you retired prior to Medicare age, how much is my income going to be? And how much is that going to cost me on Obamacare, on subsidy or lack thereof? Those types of things we need to sit down and talk about to make sure that you are not going off half-cocked, especially the last one. If you retire before 65, health insurance, we've got to figure out what you're going to do for health insurance to get you through to Medicare age, because if you have saved a substantial amount of money and you just go through and start spending that money and you're on Obamacare, it's going to cost you like $2,500 a month for you and your wife's health insurance. And so we got to be careful there so that we don't end up giving away the farm just to make health insurance needs meet for the first few years of retirement. And then to a lesser extent, we do still have to worry about that when we get into Medicare. There's something called IRMA that makes us pay more for our Medicare Part B over certain thresholds. So anyway, there's a lot of, like the first segment we talked about, there's a lot of little potholes out there that I can help you avoid, but we have to sit down and create a plan in order to make that happen.
So step one, as you said, is income planning. And beyond the 401k, of course, you're going to take a look at guaranteed income, things like Social Security. This really does set the stage for every other retirement decision. So you mentioned taxes. I don't like to talk about taxes, but they are a reality here, Jake. That is a big one here in Missouri and really pretty much everywhere. How should retirees think about taxes with a sizable 401k balance? And as I said, sizable is relative. It's $100,000 or $1 million. How do we tackle taxes, I should say?
So taxation is a function of obviously your income, but it's also in retirement, if you're using retirement dollars, 401k, 403b, all that kind of thing. It's also a function of what we're spending. So understanding how taxes are going to work, what's taxable, what's not taxable, and understanding how much total tax you're going to be paying, what bracket you're going to be in. Make sure we factor in Missouri taxes, whether we're going to be in the 12% bracket or the 22% bracket for the majority of people in this area. That makes a difference. And most people will realize a tax decrease when they retire, as far as an overall tax decrease. But a lot of people are focused on, say, hey, I need to get to $5,000 a month in retirement, and they forget to add in the taxes. And so when they actually get their $5,000 a month, it's $4,400 a month or something. And they're like, whoa, I need my tax money. So just really putting the pen to the paper, or the key to the spreadsheet,
Yeah,
whatever makes sense, and understanding, okay, here's how much spendable money I'm going to have. If you still have a mortgage or car payments and things like that, we want to make sure we factor all that in there. But because a lot of people will go from making, husband and wife might be making $150,000 a year right before retirement, then they go to retirement and they're making $80,000. Well, that $80,000 can maybe be more than the $150,000, depending on what you were funding into your retirement plan, Social Security tax, Medicare, Medicaid, more taxes, FICA, all that kind of thing. So really comparing apples to apples and say, okay, here's how much I'm actually used to spending, and here's how much my health insurance is going to go up, because for most people it will go up when you leave an employer plan. Not everybody, but most people. And then here's how much I need for taxes. And if we can kind of put all that into the plan, then everything will go fairly smoothly, versus if you just wake up and you start spending money and you don't really realize what you're spending, you're not holding any taxes out. And then we get to tax time next year and you owe $10,000 worth of taxes, and now you're pulling more money out. We want to be calculated about how we go about it.
Talking with our friend Jake Floyd here, Floyd Financial Group. Our program, of course, called Show Me the Money. We're on the air for you each Saturday here for your fiscal fitness and your financial education. And I want to remind you that if you're hearing this part of the program today, you're wondering what to do with your 401k balance, you want a little help, call us here at Floyd Financial Group for your retirement review. No cost, no obligation. 417-889-7233. It's 417-889-7233. It's a casual conversation. We would love to help you out. Okay, Jake, so what are the real options for someone who has a 401k after retirement?
Yeah, Jeff. So for the majority of people, it's probably going to make sense to roll it out of the current plan. However, you don't have to. I have quite a few people with like TSPs that really like their TSP and they end up leaving money there. And especially depending on what your age is would also determine some of this. But you can leave the money where it is. You can roll it out to an IRA, assuming it's a 401k, 403b, 457, something like that. You can schedule distributions both from your employer plan, but also from an IRA if you decide to roll it out. The big reason to roll it out is that you have so many more investment options than you do inside of a traditional 401k setup. Inside a 401k, for the most part, you have mutual funds to choose from, and it's 20 or 30 arbitrarily chosen mutual funds, and a lot of them have overlap, and you really just don't have a lot of good specific options to invest in. So that would be a reason to potentially move it out. You can take some out. You could take a chunk out of there and roll it over and leave a chunk where it is. Depending on the plan, you could convert a chunk of that to income permanently, like the annuity we were talking about that people didn't like, the old style annuity. I'm generally not a big fan of that unless they're going to give you a monster payout relative to the amount of money that they're asking for to do it. You really have quite a lot of options, but for most people, it will make sense to roll that money out so that you can be more specific about your investments and have a little bit of an easier time, especially if you want to work with an advisor, because like me as an advisor, I can't call TSP on your behalf and say, hey, we need to take this money out of here. It'll have to be out in an IRA somewhere. So if you want to have somebody help you with retirement, rolling that money out to where they can help you with it is also another reason.
So, Jake, should they take it all at once and invest it or leave it where it is?
Yeah, so you generally don't want to take it out as a lump sum because you will then owe taxes on all that money. What we want to do is do a direct rollover or some kind of rollover so that we don't want to pay all the taxes until we spend the money. And so if you take, let's say, to your example, there's $1 million and we take it from a 401k to an IRA, there are no tax consequences for that. If we take all that money and stuff it in your checking account, then you're going to have to pay taxes on all that money in the same year, which means you're going to lose nearly 40% to taxes. You're going to max out Obamacare. You're going to max out IRMA and all that. And there's a lot of things that you're not going to like about that. So we want to do a rollover when we do it, so there's no tax consequences, and that will keep things from getting out of hand.
Jake, I know a lot of people in my neighborhood who are retired, and they know what I do, and occasionally I will ask them the question, how do you take your retirement money? So what about a plan withdrawal strategy? I mean, a lot of these people are just saying, well, when I need money, I go and I take it. Is it better than a random distribution plan like a lot of people are doing to have a plan withdrawal strategy?
So we can do it any way that suits the client. So if you become a client here, we can do it any way you want to do it. Now, I would say this. There's a Latin phrase that's used and people hang it over their doorway in their kitchen, that says, know thyself.
Yeah.
Right. And so I have clients that cannot be left alone with $100 bill because it will be gone. And then I have clients that I can't force to spend money in retirement, even though they have way more than they need because they're just so used to saving. And then I have everything in between. Generally speaking, it makes more sense to set up a monthly income payment to where it gets direct deposited into your account. We hold out taxes if necessary before it hits you. That way you don't have to do quarterly tax payments and all that kind of thing. We'll just send Uncle Sam his portion also on a monthly basis, and then you get a direct deposit just like a paycheck. We can do it as often as weekly. Generally, we do it once a month because most people don't want to do bills more than once a month, but that's generally how we do it. Now, I have people in a couple other categories. I have people that really don't need the income, but when they say, hey, I want to take a couple trips a year, okay, send me $5,000 for this trip. Okay, send me $7,000 for that trip. And instead of taking the income monthly, they do it that way. And again, you obviously have to know and make sure that you're going to be capable of doing that without violating your own agreement. And then I have people that have quite a bit more than they need, either through inheritance or savings or whatever. And some of those people will do both and will say, hey, let's set up $2,000 or $3,000 a month to supplement income. And then when I want to take a trip, I'll come see you and we'll get another $10,000, $15,000, whatever it is. My job is to keep an eye on things. That's one of my jobs, is to keep an eye on things while you're out traveling and doing the things that you like to do. My job is to kind of stay on top of this stuff, make sure the spending doesn't get out of hand. And a lot of times for those last couple groups of people, my job is really just to let them know if I see a problem more than paying out the monthly income each month.
Well, Jake, I wish I could help you with the Latin, but I think I was sleeping during that class. The only thing I know is e pluribus unum, which means out of many one, represents the creation of a large unified
I like
nation
that one too.
From the 13th district there. But anyway, continuing this conversation with Jake Floyd of Floyd Financial Group, what to do with your 401k. Jake, last question here. If someone listening has a sizable 401k plan, and as I said, sizable can be $100,000, can be $1 million, and they don't have a plan yet, what should they be doing, do you think, this week?
The first thing you need, Jeff, is you need to have a plan. And it doesn't necessarily have to be at Floyd Financial Group, but I am willing and ready to help you make that plan if you would like. But yeah, you got to have a map to know where you're going. I've used this before, but my grandpa worked on a bulldozer his entire life pretty much. So he graded roads and did a lot of grading and things. And he said, Randy, if you're going to grade a road, you have to first know what a graded road should look like. Mm-hmm. So because this is likely your first time retiring, I can help you. You can stand on my shoulders to retirement because I have seen retirement well over 1,000 times now. And I can help you avoid the pitfalls that others have found if you'll allow me to. So we need a plan, and we need to execute on that plan.
Jake, great conversation here. I want to talk to the fine citizens here of Springfield, Missouri. If you've just retired or you're about to and you built up a large 401k or IRA, here's the truth. The hard part isn't saving the money. The hard part's making it last. Because once the paycheck stops, your retirement account becomes your paycheck. And one wrong move with taxes, withdrawals, or risk can cost you tens of thousands of dollars over time. So if you want a second opinion, you just want to know that you're on the right track, call Floyd Financial Group right here in Springfield and request a retirement review. We'll help you look at your income plan, your withdrawal strategy, your taxes, and how much risk you're actually taking. Call 417-889-7233 to request your Floyd Financial Group Retirement Review. No cost, no obligation, no judgment. Once again, it's 417-889-7233. Don't guess with your retirement. Get a real plan. All right, Jake, time for a break. When we come back here on Show Me the Money, we're going to be talking about Christian stewardship and retirement planning wisely without fear when our program continues here on 104.1 FM KSGF, where Springfield comes to talk.
Nowadays, 401ks are a part of life. Chances are you or your spouse have a current one, or even an old one that's tied to some long-forgotten job. I'm Randy Floyd of the Floyd Financial Group, here to ask you an important question about your 401k. Do you know your options, your fees, and if you're maxing out the benefits? If you want to know more about your 401k inside and out, call 877-889-PLAN for a complimentary review. That's 877-889-7526, or visit us online at floydfinancialgroup.com.
We're back with your financial catch of the day, and it's a big one. Here's more Show Me the Money Radio with your hosts, Jake Floyd and Jeff Shea.
Welcome back to Show Me the Money. I'm Jake Floyd. In this segment, we're going to be talking about Christian stewardship and retirement.
And Jake, for a lot of people, retirement planning isn't just about money. It's about values. It's about being faithful with what you've been entrusted with. Jake, when you hear the phrase Christian stewardship, what does it really mean to you in retirement?
Yeah, I mean, I think of the story in the Bible of the talents, right? And I think that a lot of people think about that because I get asked those questions in retirement. Christian people a lot of times will ask me what is responsible from a faith standpoint to spend in retirement. You know, how much should I spend versus how much should I give away? And I think that's different for everybody. So don't think you're going to come in here and I'm going to tell you need to give everything you have away, because that's not it at all. I think that there's a lot of people, though, that understand the value of giving, whether it's to the church or in general. If that's you and you like giving, there's a lot of planning situations and opportunities to reduce taxes, but also just making sure that we're not giving away more than we can afford to give away in retirement. But yeah, I think that the story of the talents and making sure we do good with what God gives us is a very important part of that.
Yeah, and I think money is just a tool, too. That's the way that I think about it. It's taking care of your spouse. It's staying independent. It's not becoming a burden to your kids and giving when you feel that calling and leaving a legacy without intention. A lot of Christians feel guilty around money. Jake, some feel like planning is worry. How do you address that?
Jeff, I think that planning is the opposite of worry. I think that if you have everything planned out, it doesn't mean you necessarily have to stick to that plan, every detail, every tiny thing. Think of the plan as a road that you're either driving or walking on. And if you have no road and you're just wandering out in the wilderness and you're falling off ravines and drowning in the ocean, if you have a road to go on, then those things are less likely to happen. So I would say that planning is the opposite of worry. We don't want to worry in retirement. That's the reason you retire, is so you don't have to worry about your job anymore, right? So we don't want to replace one worry with another worry. But I think that faith is the opposite of worry. And God has gotten us this far in retirement, and he didn't bring you this far to watch you fail in retirement. I think for a lot of people, tithing is a part of that, missions giving, things like that. But whatever got you to the point that you're in, we don't want to just turn away from that either and say, well, I'm retired now, I don't have to do any of those things anymore. We don't want to be feeling guilty and worrying in retirement. We want to have our plan set up and make sure that we account for all the things that are important to you, whether it's giving or what goes to your kids and your legacy, that type of thing.
So, Jake, what does planning without worry or planning without fear actually look like?
Yeah, we need to know what your needs are, so both your monthly spending, where all that income is going to come from, whether you have a pension or Social Security, or how much is coming from your investments. We need to know what's going to happen if the market goes down and our investments are down. Do you have to stop taking income? And the answer is I like to make plans that do not do that. I like to be able to simply continue on income. I don't want you to have to sacrifice your lifestyle because the market's having a bad few months. What happens if you live to 95 or 100? Are you going to have enough money out there? And I have a lot of people that say, oh, there's no way I'll live to 95. And I'll say, well, How long did your mom live? Well, she's still alive and she's 92. Well, okay. It might be possible for you to live to 95 then, right? I think a lot of people in their mind, they're like, well, I'm going to die at 75 or 78. And in reality, in today's world, people live a lot longer than that. And so it's not necessarily that we want to just save all the money until we're 95, but we want to make sure we don't run out of money later in retirement. But what happens if one spouse passes away? What happens to the income then? And there's implications on the pensions and Social Security and all that kind of thing. So if we have dealt with all that in the beginning, then that takes away a lot of the things to worry about because we've already accounted for it, we've already planned for it, and then you can just enjoy your retirement.
And Jake, there are a lot of things you can do with money. I think about 3 of them. You can spend it, you can invest it, and you can give it. Do you see generosity decline in retirement because people are just scared? I don't have this money for a long period of time, so I think I'm going to cut back on my tithing, or I'm going to cut back a little bit on my generosity. Have you seen that?
To be honest, not really. For the most part, people that are used to giving, they continue to give no matter what. I have people that come and see me on the 1st of January and say, all right, how much did I make last year? I want to give 10% of it. I have all kinds of different people. And I would say, honestly, for some people, it goes up because most people in today's world have qualified retirement plans, 401ks, 403bs that get rolled into IRAs. And when they have to start taking their RMD, a lot of people really love the idea of a QCD. QCD, Qualified Charitable Distribution, allows you to give your RMD money straight to a charity and not have it affect your taxes. There's people that actually give because they don't want to spend it in taxes.
Right.
I don't know if that's the right reason. I won't comment on that, but I would say that if we're giving anyway, we might as well give it where it's going to give us the most tax benefit. I'd rather give less to Uncle Sam. That leaves more for you, more for the charity, more for everybody. That's one of the things we keep an eye on too.
Talking with Jake Floyd of Floyd Financial Group, we're talking about Christian stewardship and retirement planning wisely without fear. Our phone number, 417-889-7233. If you'd like to further this conversation with Jake or Randy, 417-889-7233. So, Jake, let's talk about value-based planning. What does this actually mean in practical terms?
It means a financial plan that matches what you actually believe in. And for some people, it's not super important for them to give money to a charity or to their kids for that matter. Some people are like, hey, I'm going to spend this money while I'm here. That's what's important to them. That's what they value, is being able to do what they want when they want. And then there's people that say, I want to be able to leave as much of a legacy to my kids as I can. Sometimes clients will say, when my parents died, they didn't leave me anything, so I want to make sure I leave my kids as much as I can, that kind of thing. That's important. Some people will come in and they're like, I want to set up a foundation and I want to have 100 years worth of income going to the church off this money. Sometimes that could be appropriate. A lot of times it's not. But I understand the sentiment of wanting to maximize what you give to impact the kingdom or impact other charities. That's the values-based planning, is making sure it goes according to what's most important to you.
Jake, 2 more things I want to talk about here. A lot of retirees worry about being a burden to their kids. Is that part of what I call stewardship?
Yeah, Jeff, I think so. I think that in order for you to do a good job with that money, part of that is making sure that you're not a burden to those around you, whether it's long-term care expenses or death expenses and that kind of thing. You don't want to have your kids or someone else close to you having to deal with those bills and those burdens because you didn't set up a plan that made sense. I think I'll thank you on behalf of your kids for setting up your financial plan. Let's say that.
Jake, what role does legacy play in Christian retirement planning?
I think legacy is a big deal, but I don't think it's limited to money. I think there's more to it than that. Especially biblically, there's more to it than that. I mean, an inheritance and a legacy is part of that, but it's not the only thing. When you think of a lot of the biblical characters, especially in the Old Testament, but even some in the New Testament, yes, there was generational wealth that was left, but the wealth of knowing God and living in a land named after some of these biblical characters and having their descendants be as numerous as the stars and all this kind of thing. I think that legacy, passing down your belief system, as well as your money, as well as your property and things like that. Legacy, in some ways, means different things to different people. That's why having a plan set up to make sure it's accomplished and having somebody, doesn't have to be me, but I'm here to help, somebody to bounce ideas off of and say, hey, here's what I was thinking about my legacy. What do you think about this? And I can say, hey, I think that's a great idea. Or, hey, maybe if we do this a little bit differently, then we can avoid this pitfall and this pitfall. In many cases, I talk about a lot of things other than just money, and I can help with some of those financial decisions in retirement and making the most of them and least amount of taxes possible and all that kind of thing. And in some cases, I'm just a sounding board. And I think that that can be very helpful for people who don't have that anywhere else.
I love this conversation, Jake, because retirement planning isn't about just numbers. It's about values. It's about family. It's about peace of mind, and it's about purpose. When your plan is aligned with your values, you don't have to live in fear. You can live with confidence and generosity. And if you're listening right now, you want a retirement plan that's not just about money, but about stewardship, wisdom, and protecting your family, call us here at Floyd Financial Group and request your retirement review. Our number, 417-889-7233. That number, 417-889-7233, will help you take a look at your income plan, your taxes, your investment risk, and your legacy strategy so you can move into retirement with confidence, not fear. Once again, 417-889-7233 to request your Floyd Financial Group retirement review. Once again, we would love to help you out. Jake, time for a break. We'll be right back with more of Show Me the Money and talking about leaving money to kids versus spending it, how Ozark families think about this when our program continues here on 104.1 FM KSGF, where Springfield comes to talk.
People of the Ozarks, step away from the fishing pole and prepare to be shown the money, because we're back with more straight talk and honest answers with Jake Floyd and Jeff Shea.
Welcome back to Show Me the Money. I'm Jake Floyd. In this segment, we're going to be talking about leaving money to kids versus spending it.
And boy, oh boy, Jake, this can be a loaded conversation for families. People wrestle with guilt, love, and priorities, and they often haven't had this conversation. Retirement planning isn't just about numbers. It's about values and clarity. So, Jake, let's start broadly here. Why do so many families struggle with the question, spend it now or leave money behind?
To be honest, Jeff, I think there's a variety of reasons for that. Sometimes it's because they feel like they have already done enough for their kids and that they don't need any more. Sometimes it's they don't want to give their kids so much money when they're gone that means they never have to do anything again, and they kind of waste away because they don't need the money. And that's not really good for people either. There's a lot of different reasons why people struggle with this. Sometimes it's because people don't have kids. And rather than leaving it to a charity or to a cousin or something, they decide to spend that money on them while they're here. And I say more power to them.
So, Jake, how do Ozarks families typically think about things like this?
Yeah, I would say the average Ozarks family says, hey, I've accumulated this money. I want to make sure it lasts my lifetime. And what's left over, I want to go to my kids. It's not I want to sacrifice so that my kids can have more. It's not screw those kids. They don't need anything. Those greedy. No, they don't say that either. But usually it's, I'm going to live my life and then they get what's left over. And hopefully they have passed a legacy, as we were just talking about, over their lifetime, teaching their kids about money and things to where the kids don't need the money, right? And it's more of a nice thing than it is my kid better have this inheritance or they're not going to be able to make it kind of a thing. I think generally that's how most people look at it in this area is I'm going to use what I need and pass on what's left over.
And Jake, I think here in the Ozarks and Springfield, there's a strong work ethic and frugality. A lot of people grew up with the mindset, work hard, save, and leave something behind. But I also see people who've sacrificed everything and they've never enjoyed retirement. The challenge, I think, is balancing legacy with living. So when we say legacy, Jake, what exactly are we talking about here?
Yeah, Jeff, legacy is not only about money. It's about values. It's about habits. It's about relationships. Money is part of that. Heaven knows there's nothing like money to get in the middle of a relationship, whether it's a sibling or a spouse. Money is one of the most fought over things ever, which is why a lot of people end up doing trust work and estate planning to make sure to minimize siblings fighting and that kind of thing. But legacy is about teaching kids responsibility. The world of the generous gets larger and larger, and the world of the stingy gets smaller and smaller, or something. That's a biblical reference. I don't remember the exact verse, but I think when we're thinking about, and I will tell you that is very true. Some of my clients, that everything seems to go right for are some of the most generous people that I know. And you can really see it play out in real time. There's a handful of clients I can think of that are incredibly generous, and they just keep winning and winning and winning and winning in retirement. Legacy is supporting causes and ministries that you care about. And it's not even so much about the money. It's more about teaching kids to put money where your heart is and how that relates biblically for most of us. But if you're not a Christian, it doesn't have to be necessarily biblical. But I think legacy is all those things.
Jake, when people decide to spend money instead of leaving it to their kids, I think guilt seems to come up a lot. How do you help people redefine or overcome that fear?
Yeah, so I think that kids in general, good kids, should not be depending on their parents to save them when they're 65 and in retirement. If you get something from your parents, then that's great, but you should not be spending your entire adult career banking on your parents to save you. And I know that's kind of strong words, so I may be offending some people out there, but hopefully not. I think some parents feel guilty because they're being guilt-tripped by their kids. I see it all the time where I'll have kids and parents in here together, and the kids will be like, they're spending my inheritance, which is crazy. In my opinion, it's crazy. We want to reframe the conversation and say, as the parent and feeling guilty about spending their money, does that make you selfish? Of course not. Are you being wise? Are you being intentional? Yeah. I think that spending your money in retirement is not something you should feel guilty about. That's the whole purpose it's there. If Dad was sitting here right now, Randy, he'd be saying, you see these little furry things running around all fall. They're called squirrels, and they're picking up acorns, and they stuff them in the ground. They stuff them in trees, and they stuff them all over the place. And they do that because someday they're going to be hungry and there won't be any more acorns around, so they can go eat those reserves that they have put out there so they can survive the winter. Well, the same is true of work and retirement, and that's the reason you save, is so that you can spend that money to get you through retirement.
Jake, you and I have a friend who is well-to-do through hard work, and I think you know who I'm talking about. And he bought this great house, and he built it up and everything, and he wanted to show it to his son. So his son drives up, gets out of the car, looks at the house. The first thing he says to his dad is, "Who gets this when you die?" Many people, understandably, Jake, avoid the conversation with their kids. It can be uncomfortable. Why is that, do you think? It is awkward, isn't it?
I'm not sure I would have the cojones to ask that question to my dad. I think there's a lot of people that think about, why would you buy that expensive car or that expensive house or whatever? And especially people that have never had really big, nice things. And I will tell you that when you talk to people that have a lot of money, and when I say a lot of money, let's say 8 figures plus, I think one thing that they will all have in common is they will tell you that none of that stuff means anything without the people that you're closest to.
Right.
And having a house like that is only worth anything if the kids and grandkids are in the house when their friends are coming over. And if you have a big movie room or something, watching movies in it alone is not why you build a movie room.
I do like the direction that you're taking, though, because it is so true. I've known people who have fancy cars, but it doesn't mean anything if you can't share it with somebody. You can go on a fancy trip overseas and see a lot of things, but it doesn't mean anything if you can't share it. So I know where you're going with that.
I have a guy I can think of right now that's a client of mine, and he's a great guy. I love him to death, but he has chosen to do life alone. He's got a lot of money, doesn't spend it. And I often think, why hang on to all that money and not spend it, whether it's on yourself or anybody else, if you have nobody to leave it to? Like, I understand saving and wanting to give it to your kids because you love your kids and you want to help your kids or whatever. But why do it if you don't have any kids? You don't have anywhere to leave it to. You're not part of the church. You're not going to give it to charity. Like, why? I don't understand that. And I think that this is part of the world of the generous gets larger and larger. We're not just talking about money. We're talking about legacy. We're talking about family. We're talking about friendships. And I will tell you that none of that fancy stuff means anything if you don't have anybody to share it with.
And that's exactly right. I was talking to my sister the other day, and I bought her an airline ticket, and she said, "Well, you're spending all this money." I said, "Look, it's only money. You can't take it with you. I've never seen a hearse towing a U-Haul.
Yep.
I would rather use it to make people happy, to do, I think, what it was intended to do. And the conversations we were talking about with kids can seem awkward because kids don't want to seem greedy and the parents don't want to seem controlling, but avoiding it can cause a lot of confusion and even conflict later. We encourage structured discussions. What are your expectations? What do you want to leave behind? And how should your inheritance be handled? So how do you think parents should figure out how much to leave and how much to spend? Do you have a formula or a plan, or does it just depend upon the individual?
Jeff, it really just depends on the individual. It depends on what's important to them. Some people don't really have an answer to that question, and so we'll just go on a little bit of an expedition figuring out the answer to that question. But most people that come in, I'd say 80% of the people that come in, know exactly how they want that to go. And they'll come in and say, hey, I'm going to spend what I need. If I spend it all, then that's fine. It's not my goal to spend it all, but if that's what it takes to get me through retirement, that's fine. I want anything left over to go to the kids. I want the house to go to the kids. But I didn't save all this money for them. I gave them the best life I could while I was working. And it's not that I don't want them to have, but I need to be able to live in retirement. That's how most people will look at it. Again, I have people, though, that are like, I'm going to save every penny. I'm going to live on Social Security. I'm not going to spend one dime so I can maximize inheritance to my kids. And then I have people that say, those, we'll say GLBs, right? And you can fill in what that means to you.
Yeah.
You know, they were never there for me and I haven't seen my son in 10 years and yada, yada, yada. So they don't get anything. And I don't know that I can blame them for that sentiment. I've watched too many kids that haven't talked to their parents in 20 years come into my office 10 hours after dad passed away to feel too bad about that. So it's all up to you, but I'm happy to help you work through that if you wish.
Okay, Jake, in the interest of time here, what advice would you give to parents just starting this conversation?
It's a big subject to tackle, but you can start small and start early and think about what is it that you value most. Your retirement plan should probably, and your legacy plan should probably mirror what you value the most in life. And that will dictate what kind of legacy you want to leave, whether it's monetary or whether it's beyond money. I think when you're thinking about those things, what do you want your legacy to say about what's important to you? And would you rather have that money now and spoil grandkids and fly them on vacation and bring the kids with them, with your children and their children? Or would you rather give them a check later in life? And again, there's no right or wrong answer here. I think for most people, though, they would rather spend some money while they're here to see them get the benefit from it. And I don't think it's an either or thing either. I think it's probably some of both. But I'd say start planning, start thinking about this because, as you know, life happens faster than we wish it would.
Jake, I think the number one takeaway from our conversation today is that intentionality beats default every time. I mean, whether you spend, you give, or you save for your kids, make it a plan. When families talk openly and they document decisions that align with their values, retirement becomes a time of peace, not guilt or conflict. You know, leaving money behind isn't just about cash. It's about teaching, blessing, and creating peace. And if you're listening right now and you want help having these conversations, building a values-aligned plan and ensuring your retirement and legacy are secure, call us here at Floyd Financial Group and request your retirement review. Our number, 417-889-7233. It's 417-889-7233. It's your Floyd Financial Group retirement review. Get clarity, peace, and a plan that honors both your retirement and your family legacy. Oh, what a great show we've had today here, Jake. Again, if our listeners have missed any part of the program, we're also a podcast. Go to wherever you get your podcast, search for Show Me the Money with Randy and Jake and myself. You'll find this show and many of our past shows so you can stay on top of your journey towards a confident retirement. Jake, out of time for this week. I want to thank you for your time, but most importantly, I want to thank our great listeners here in the last bastion of Sanity, Springfield, Missouri for joining us. So for Jake Floyd, I'm Jeff Shade. Have a great weekend. We'll talk again next week right here with Show Me the Money on 104.1 FM KSGF, where Springfield comes to talk.
The information provided in the preceding program is for educational purposes only and is not intended as investment advice for any individual or entity. All information contained herein is believed to be from reliable sources. However, we make no representations as to its completeness or accuracy. The opinions expressed are subject to change without notice and do not constitute financial, legal, or tax advice. Please consult your financial professional before executing any financial strategy. Financial planning is offered through Floyd Financial Group, LLC, an SEC registered investment advisor.